Hello and welcome to Kitbashed Contenders episode 6, where we catch up with some of our contenders, see how they're doing in the contest so far. With just over a week left in the contest, our 5 contenders are doing the final touches onto their conversions. So as they make their little tweaks, the little final piece to put it all together, we're going to chat to 3 of them to find out what they've planned for the contest so far, their other conversion plans, and how they hobby. So without further ado, let's chat to some contenders. On a warm evening, I am joined by Will. We're both enjoying the weather slightly here. So, hello.
Hello. How are you?
Warm, shiny, got a nice veneer going on now, like good polished oak.
Lovely.
So we're also joined by the charming chap next to our pictures, which sort of me without a shave for about a few weeks. It's getting there. So this is probably the most complete image we've seen so far of your contenders entry.
Yes. I've been a little bit cloak and dagger, not with the other contenders.
Oh, they've seen it all.
There's been quite a bit of sharing across from there, but sort of not wanting to share too much before it's ready. Yeah. But this is probably the most complete that he's been, ready to go. So yeah, it's really taken on a life of its own.
So you set yourself a bigger challenge than anyone else in seeing the bones in the model to make it something entirely species-wise, something new as well. How was that for you?
It was fine. As I said on previous episodes, the main thing that I look at when it comes to most conversions is scale.
Yep.
So with the Hobgrot, he is a little bit smaller than a human. So I don't have in my bits box an extensive collection of grot pieces.
Yep.
So I knew that I'd either have to be inventive, find other pieces, or just sort of tweak things around. And myself, I've had lots of dwarf bits and lots of empire bits in the past, and I was hoping to make him into a halfling. And I decided that I was going to use a couple of different types of heads. But the challenge I had was that one of the heads I wanted to try and use was a Khorne Blood Reaver.
Right, yeah.
And I think it should fit scale-wise nicely. But he had fangs.
Yeah.
In trying to get rid of the fangs, I'd made a big mess around the mouth. And
it's got punched in the face too many times.
I was thinking I could go ahead and I could sculpt a beard, I could do lots around it. But yeah, I just couldn't face doing that much more sculpting.
Yeah.
So I had a look around what bits I had, and I found this old boy here, the old dwarf warrior head.
Classic by the sheer colour of the plastic alone. You can tell that is an old classic part.
It is early 2000s white dwarf, white plastic.
When I was a lad, yeah, back in those days.
Pre-skull pass.
So, I mean, how much of the Hobgrot's there? How much have you had to sculpt in there? Because you can see the front of the body is sculpted. How is that front to back resculpt?
Mostly it is one piece of the Hobgrot. So the Hobgrot is the leg, the arms, and the torso, which is mostly the back.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't have to sculpt all up the leg, but where the push fit parts of the Hobgrots, you've got a leg and the front bit on one side, I had to resculpt the leg, which I used a wine bottle and a pin.
It's a great use of a bit.
Yeah. And a similar bit appears elsewhere as well. And as I was doing that, I was thinking, well, let's make trousers. So I sculpted over the leg. So you miss the top half of the leg, but it's still there. The torso, there's the big void in the middle. So that had to be sculpted over.
Yep.
And I didn't have to sculpt the little waistcoat jacket on, but I thought if I didn't give him something on top, he'd look a bit funny.
It's a bit
So
of
I have
personality,
sort of,
isn't
like,
it?
jacket all on his back. Yeah. So really, and this is going to sound awful, the only things that you can visibly see, because I've also cut off his hands, are his arms, some bits around his neck,
Yep.
and from one knee down. But the pose and everything from that is from that model.
The bones of the model are there. It's just being used as a frame to kind of build over each time, hasn't it? You've built over the hobgrots. Yeah, that's the right torso size for this race, this faction. Because obviously there's not a lot of like halflingy bits other than Blood Bowl, which obviously there's a lot 8 poses in that Blood Bowl team. The AOS doesn't really do halflings.
No, I did contemplate, because I do have a Blood Bowl team I haven't really done anything with. I did contemplate doing something with that, but where the hobgrot is slightly more slender than a normal halfling, the face would have been a lot bigger and a lot fatter. So I needed something more human or slightly slimmed down.
Yeah.
And although the dwarf head is still fairly large, with the beard, the face is quite slimmed down anyway. So it was a good enough fit, even though it's slightly more caricatured.
And obviously you've gone the most probably extensive in basing, barring Sam's Tower of Cork, in order to be able to integrate all the models. Your base probably explains the model. It's probably the best way to put it. It sets the scene for the model really well.
Yeah, I wanted to be a little bit different, because most of the basing that I do for most of my armies is texture paint, maybe a couple of rocks. I don't even really use grass tufts.
Yes.
So I thought, well, as this is a challenge, as this is going to be something different, as I started going down the mindset of a swashbuckler, I could have just put him on a sandy base and that would have been fine. But I decided, no, let's make something a bit different. I thought, well, let's make something slightly more scenic. So I played about the ideas of the jetty and how I could do that. And I found a bit of slate that's propped up against the back of the jetty as well, to help support it and to give it a bit of definition of being near a coast. I did little bits just to try and get across. And then, well, if you're a smuggler or you're a pirate, what would you have? You'd be bringing in cargo or loot or whatever. And there are lots of things that nearly made it onto the base. So I had some really quite large barrels, but they're a bit too big. I had some chests from the Empire cannon kit, but the footprint size was a little bit too big. That meant I would have had to throw other bits off, so it didn't quite work. And the biggest gut punch was I wanted to put in the Empire powder mag.
Yeah, it's a beautiful bit.
It's a lovely little bit, but it's just that little bit too big. Where it's the 50mm base, and having the jetty makes it slightly bigger, that you can maybe have a little bit more play in one length.
Yeah.
It's not quite big enough. So it would have just been a bit too cluttered. So I had to make a decision, and unfortunately he had to go.
The parrot was the good choice, though, because the parrot really fits the swashbuckler theme beautifully. Which obviously, again, is a very fine, detailed bit of sculpting. I mean, you've sculpted so much between these models.
Yeah. I've got the parrot. I've got the guy with his stomach, his trousers, his belt. I've got the waistcoat, got an eye patch. Had to block him behind his head. I decided, whether rightly or wrongly, to do green stuffing across the water. 2 of the barrels are from the ogre kits, which have got the indentation to fit on the waist of the ogres. So I've had to green stuff the back of barrels. And it has been quite a bit. But
it's come together really well. Like I said, it's all of these bits aren't designed to be used that way, but the green stuff has let you completely resculpt, because I would not look at Hobgrot and go halfling swashbuckler. My mind would not be able to go there. It just doesn't go there. You look at it like, no, I can see the frame in there. I know how big that model is. I know the frame, and then you're like, well, halfling's fine, and then the base fleshes them out. So it reminds you of the White Dwarf subscribe models, because we talked about this before. The base gives so much context about what he is. He's not just, a bandit on the road. He is a swashbuckler. How can you tell? Pirate nearby. He's on the jetty. It's above the water. It is it works beautifully.
Yeah, and there's just the little touches. So at the gaming club I go to, there's like a sprue graveyard, and I can't keep away from it, where people have built kits and go, well, I don't need this anymore, and it's clustering up my house. So the shell and underneath I've also got some other corally based bits from the Ideneth kits, which I'd never buy an Ideneth kit really, because
Elves.
there's, well, it's more floating sharks and things. There's bits in my mind that just go no.
I've got something in the cabinet right here that are looking at me as you say that.
But the flatulent kits and old bits from Mordheim accessory kits. So there are things that I've done that are just little tweaks.
Yeah.
That allow the kit to sort of inform the rest of the model that yes, this is likely something you'd have. Yes, this is something that's lived in or real about it. In a purely fantasy setting.
Yeah, because it's putting your model into that setting. Obviously, it's well and good having the swashbuckler on a bit of dirt, and you'd go, you know what, he's made a model, but putting them into setting makes them that character. You've fleshed out the world around them to make them feel like they're living within the setting. And it's like you said, it's those little personality touches that you go, yeah, that works. That's how I know what he is.
Yeah, and I could have, for example, with the hat's from a Greatswords kit.
Yeah.
And I could have just left him bald. I could have decided he was going to be very dwarfy and could have given him like a Slayer mohawk, or I could have given him a bandana or something. But it's just that little thing to go, yes, that slight opulence with still being a bit grungy.
It's a little flair, and it'd be hard to imagine without the hat, having seen him with the hat. It just naturally works with the waistcoat, with the slightly puffy pants. Yeah, it is all part of the swashbuckler aesthetic, and each choice has been made that way to. And even with the sword is kind of a crude parody sword. You know, it's not this finely detailed thing. It's probably killed a few men, but it's not. We had one with a history of really a 5 foot long sword that dwarf struggling to hold, but it's not. It's something that looks functional for the model it's been chosen for.
Absolutely, yeah, and like as I said with the barrels, because it's come from like the ogre kit, they've got little strappings on it, and they're thinking, well, maybe that's been bundled up with something else. Yeah. So I've not just deliberately gone ahead and got rid of those things, but I don't know if you can see in the image, because the front of the barrel where there's the stopcock bit.
Yep.
Because it's from the ogre kit, there's a little tassel that hangs down. I've had to snip that off and turn it 90 degrees so it fits.
Yeah.
And it's just little things like that you don't have to do. But if you don't, it just looks a little bit weird and a little bit out of sync with everything else.
Because you want a model that invites people to look closer at it, and it's those little things you'd see the closer you get to the model. So the finer details are saying, you know, I am confident in the model that people are going to want to get close to it. And when they get close, I want to make sure that everything then lines up to continue it through.
Yeah, because myself, I'm always happy to hold my hands up and say I'm not the best sculptor, but I'll give it a good go. And I'm not the best painter, but I'll do an all right enough job until I'm happy with it.
But that's how obviously we get to best sculptors, get painters, is by giving it the go. If you're too afraid to do something, I mean, that all works perfectly. That's me. It's not. If you've been afraid and you've gone, you know what, I can't sculpt, just grot belly and no waistcoat, you would have lost so much that's been achieved by doing those bits.
Yeah, because I haven't sculpted a human's, we'll say human size, because it's roughly there. I haven't really sculpted a human size body part ever. Everything has been sort of gap filling or maybe a bit of fur here or there. So this is sort of more in depth than what I'd normally do. I might do like a bit of cloth here and there, which you sort of have dangling down and go, that's fine, that's just cloth. Yeah. But yeah, this is sort of more extensive than anything I've probably done.
But it's paid off beautifully.
Well, thank you.
So what else have you been working on then? Obviously, I know you've got limited hobby time, so what else is sort of on your hobby desk, as it were?
Well, I have started painting this guy up. So I'm hoping that there'll be some bits that help tie things together for that. But I have been getting distracted. I have been painting up Imperial Guard, well, Astra Militarum Commissar, and I've had a converted 40k Inquisitor that I've been sat on for ages and decided to start painting up. And before I finished either of them, I've decided to start painting some Star Wars Legion as well. So, yeah.
Busy hobby desk then.
Well, no, it's keeping a couple of things that are interesting. So, where with this, it's quite fragile in places like the Parrot.
Yeah.
I don't really want to be taking it to do it on my lunch break at work.
Yeah.
So there's some bits that come with me to work during lunchtime and help me sort of have a mental break from what I'm doing and come back. And sometimes you're just looking at things going, I can't decide what to do with building this. I can't decide what to do with painting this. So something like a Star Wars Republic clone, if it's white, doing the black edging, you don't have to think about it because that's what it is. Yeah. So while you're thinking about something else, a sort of slightly menial or different task that you know what you're going to do with it, you can just do, and it gives you the headspace to sort of think away and go, oh, actually, that might work.
So taking a step back, focus on something else, rather than press yourself to get into something so in-depth. But you know what, I'm going to do something I enjoy, and I'm going to come back and I'll enjoy this more by the time I come back to it.
And it's also not beating yourself up about the kits, because this, I probably had about 70-80% of it mapped out in my mind and roughly done after 2 weeks. Yeah. But the little bits, like the positioning of the stuff on the jetty, whether I was happy completely with the trousers or what accessories I was going to put on the belts, how I was thinking of attaching certain things. So one night I basically made, all I did for this was stick the cocktail stirrers together for the jetty, and that was it. And I know there were other things I was thinking about. I know there's other things I was wanting to do, but those little chip away bits, little and often, and not feeling the pressure that I have to do this by tomorrow or I have to do this, otherwise it's a wasted bit of hobby time. It's beneficial for everybody.
It's a hobby as well, isn't it? It's the thing. You're meant to enjoy it, and if you're pressuring yourself that much while doing it, you're not going to enjoy doing it. It'll become work.
Yeah, absolutely. And there have been times, and some people thrive under the pressure, and sometimes it's good to have a deadline. So having a deadline for this, I've still got about another week to go, and do some more painting. I could do some more tweaks and that if I wanted. I know they're not being evaluated on what the paint job's like, but it's, if I want to do things, I can. Yeah,
and that was the entire reason there's no painting involved. So the 4 weeks is probably quite lengthy. I know most of you could have probably bashed it out within a week, but then you'd have probably rushed it and go, you know what, that wasn't the way I wanted it to be. And the no painting is purely because A, it's the test of your conversion skills, and B, 4 weeks and then going, oh, I expect a golden demon standard paint job, and if you don't do that, then all your conversion work's going to have been wasted. Yeah. It should be enjoying making the model. That's entire, because I love converting. Converting is probably my favourite part of any kind of hobbying. As probably you can tell, I spam Twitter with all of my conversions. It should be fun. It should be, you know what, I'm just going to go nuts for my bits box. I'm going to see what comes out of it, and I'm going to enjoy it.
Yeah, I think this whole Kitbashed contenders thing has sort of made me sort of take a step back from my main Beast of Chaos army, because I've been on it for 2-3 years, and I've been putting a lot of pressure on what's the next thing, what's the next thing, what's the next thing. And this has been quite a nice little palette cleanser. And the Star Wars Legion things, I'm not really doing any converting for that. So it's basically out of the box, paint it. And anything that's going to be unique is probably going to be how I uniquely paint some of the markings or whatever.
It helps that they're clones, so that you can kind of, they're going to look alike.
But it's that, those things are sort of taking the pressure off, and meaning I don't have to think hard about the next thing or feeling pressured, because I know that with when you have certain armies or certain things that you're doing, you feel the pressure that people are thinking, oh, that's cool, what's coming next? Yeah.
And you want to build something because you want to build it, not because there has to be a next thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to feel that I'm confined by having to build Ungor or having to build certain things because the meta is changing and I probably should have them in my army. I'm almost feeling like I need to think about what the next project is.
Yeah.
And I haven't made a decision as to what that's going to be. So it's nice to sort of take that time out and maybe do some independent models or
a bit of a palette cleanser.
So like this. And this.
Oh, I lost you for a second there. I think I've lost you still. You are frozen, or I've dropped you. Oh, that was a loud beeping noise.
I think we were just a bit frozen there.
I was going to say, one of us was frozen. Right, so I'm going to leave you to get back to your evening. Thank you very much for catching up with me today. I really look forward to seeing how this comes together because you're all doing amazing work and this is going to be a stunner. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And fingers crossed, I will be able to get it looking as good as I'm hoping it is in my mind.
Awesome. Cheers. I'm joined by Ben, one of our contenders, who's very nearly finished on his model. You can get further along than we can see, but I've kept the final photos away for now until the finale. So, hello.
Hi.
So,
great to be back.
Yeah, it's warm now. Very warm. This lovely sheen on me is sunlight and warmth and the glow of hobby.
Gloss varnish.
Exactly. So, your model has probably got the most motion in it out of any of our contenders. Was that something you were aiming for when you originally made the concept, or was it happened by like happy accident? How did you plan to go at that?
No, well, 100% something I planned for, but an extra, I would say, 10% on top of that was happenstance. So 110% total.
Yes, that's a fair amount. That's a reasonable number.
No, squigs. Like if you look at the squig hopper sculpts or the squig herd sculpts, or of course the mangler squig sculpt, they're like charging. So I wanted something with a lot of motion in it. So yeah, as you can see, there is only 1 foot and 1 wheel.
I was going to say I can see daylight through the other wheel at the back, just about.
Yeah. It was further tilted, but I didn't want to cut the Hobgrot's feet off to angle him differently.
Yeah.
So I thought I would leave the wagon at fairly level, so just to save myself a bit of work. But it is one wheeling it.
And so, do you often try and capture motion in your models, or is this kind of outside the comfort zone? Because obviously squigs naturally have the motion. They're already bouncing, they're always up on like a mushroom flying forwards. Is motion something you factor into your models quite a lot?
I mean, to be honest, no. Like thinking about the other stuff I've done, they've all been pretty static.
Yeah.
So this was something new. I had a lot of reference, having worked with squigs in the past, making it sound whatever. Yeah. So I figured, okay, so how do they work? I love the like the Stormcast Eternals flying models, the prosecutors, because they don't have the transparent stick.
No, the awkward scrolls, which if you put them down at the wrong angle, they just fall over backwards on themselves.
Well, okay, I mean, in practice, maybe it's not as good as it looks, but
even like the Fox from Lumineth, which has again the scrolls, but a bit more stability. It has that motion built in without having a clear flight stem there, kind of blocking it out.
Exactly. Because if you compare that with the dragons, they look quite static.
Yeah.
They're flying in the air, but they're just sort of stuck there.
Because either you have to put the effort into the basing yourself to give it the basing motion, whereas obviously the Stormcast and the Fox, the motion comes down from them to the ground. There is that continuity of direction.
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a lot of things in mind. Small points of contact on the ground, and like scaffolding, holding them up. I did some pinning for I don't often pin my models, which maybe I should, but turns out slate is easier to drill through than plastic. Who'd have thought?
I would have broken like glass when you tried to drill through it.
I got a very, very small drill.
Ah, okay.
So, hobby drill. But yeah.
So, with that forward motion, you've got the rider, you've got the squigs. How much of the base is just there to support the model? Is the base entirely cosmetic? Is there anything sort of structural, call it, other new pins?
No, so actually, I've got the model next to me
Right.
here. I won't show it on the camera, but I'll look closely at it. So it's pinned once on that wheel. The other one is just like the squigs footers on the ground. Other than that, it is pretty much freestanding.
And that's jeweler's chain linking the two?
But, yeah. So that was my first time using that. I would have liked to have had it looking a bit more taut, especially in the one that's jumping forward.
Because this closest one looks pretty taut to me. It looks almost like a straight line from this end.
If you look at it close up, it's a bit loose. It's not as slack as the one that's on the ground, which is good because it looks like one's jumping forwards and one is about to jump forwards. So I'm happy with the effect. I'm really happy with the effect. One other thing about the base thing, I said that 10% of the motion was happenstance. That's because the base wasn't big enough. So I needed to have stuff sort of off the front and off the back to fit my idea onto it.
Because you brought forward the question for the FAQ. I said 50mm round, but what does it mean for cavalry? So we've been building up the FAQ from this season, haven't we? Obviously, worked out 60x40 was the fairest way of going for a cavalry base whilst not exceeding the size of the 50mm round. Which is a good question. I just never thought of any of you doing a long model.
To be honest, I've got a load of cavalry bases that I don't have any use for, so I figured I might as well use one. But I would say that I took the piss somewhat. You gave very, very clear outline of the rules, and I said, yeah, but what if I did this?
You've all been asked a great question. So obviously it's the first season, so trying to find out what works and what doesn't. Obviously, I have a vision in my head of the model all of you are going to build, and not one of you have built the model that was in my head. So the guidelines were kind of quite loose in that regard. And every time you ask questions, they're like, yep, I'm writing that one down for next time, because that's actually a valid question, So Will was about, what's a diorama base and what's just a base that shows off the model. And then obviously Sam trying to fit everything onto the 50mm round, and then yourself, the cavalry base. They've got their own approach. It's a nice way of converting that you've all approached it so differently. It's thrown up these scenarios where we can write the FAQ with it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, whenever the next one happens, if another one happens, I will absolutely be joining in at home as well, with whatever the new restrictions are.
So, what are your current hobby projects outside of this? What are you working on right now?
So I've got a few things on the go. I'm halfway through painting my Gobblepalooza.
Yep.
I've got loads of stuff on the go. I've got Gobblepalooza. I've just bought a load of squigs. The biggest thing on the horizon I'm really excited for is doing something with my Alarial beetle.
Right.
I am going to. I think my plan is to cover it in snotlings, put a Doomdiver catapult on it, being pulled by a Trog, and run it as a Mega Gargan, my Doomspite army.
So do you have the classic Doomdiver, or is that something you're building yourself? Because the old one was metal, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I will have to source a Doomdiver, which is why it's a work in progress. I think I do want to go with one of the old school ones, not the first gen one, the second gen one that comes like a little crew. He's got a good face.
They're very character flow models, weren't they? Especially if you're going with the Blood Bowl snotlings around them. There's so much character in those little crew pieces, aren't there, that you can... But obviously you've got the Blood Bowl kit because there's quite clearly a pump wagon on this model here. Which, you got it there.
Yeah, and I've also... So actually I originally got them to... I think I mentioned it before, to cover my Marsh Crawler Sloth with snotlings.
Which is a nice way of adding that personality to anything Destruction. Destruction is all about the personality on the models. Big brutish orcs, but weird, wacky, insane scenery around you.
Yeah, and I love tiny details. Like if you look on the model there, you can see sort of draped over the edge of the chariot and on the stone next to the squig a couple of snakes, and I've painted them, and I'm so pleased with how they've come out. They were it's just I love tiny details. So any bits that I can chuck onto a model to add a little bit of extra juice.
It puts the model into the realms, doesn't it? So it's not just a chariot; it's chariot going through a living sort of, I assume, garish environment with all these feral beasts around it.
Yeah. So actually, that's a good point. I should do some weathering. I should make it look like they've just trudged through some mud. Yeah, really try and sell the fact that this is. I mean, it's not a diorama base, but this could have just been lifted out of a diorama.
Yeah.
That's what I want it to look like.
So how often do you think about the realms your models are in when you build them? Are you a big realm-specific modeler? Is it something that comes up afterwards when writing army lists? Where's your order in creation?
So my Gloomspite were my first army. I basically just painted them as they were on the box. So not an awful lot of thought into it. My Soulblight, I thought, okay, I've got my first model was a white king.
Yeah.
So I thought, so this guy was the king. Where was he the king of? What happened? Why is he dead? Who were his subjects? And from there, it just sort of spiraled. I thought, okay, so maybe he was. I want to paint some snow, so I'll say he was the king of some northern kingdom, which was destroyed by frost giants. And then from there, I was like, okay, well, who fought the frost giants? Why were they fighting? And so on and so on. And then, I've really put a lot of thought into the.
You've built out of the narrative there and kind of spread it onwards. While obviously Grot's models came first, and then story will obviously form afterwards.
Right, absolutely. I after having played a few games, I realised I'm not actually very good at the tabletop games. So I'll find my enjoyment elsewhere. Maybe that's just because of the models.
There can be joy from losing. I always tell myself this just while I'm sulking after a tournament, that you can enjoy losing, and one day I will master it. But until then, I will champion the idea that it is possible until I can actually get there. Yeah.
Well, I'll take your word for it, and maybe I'll enjoy it next time.
Path to Glory, great way to play because it's quite narrative. You're not playing against your opponent; you're playing with them.
Right, now, okay, you say that, but the last Path to Glory game I played, my Fungoid Cave Shaman got sniped on second round of turn 5 by a single Blood Warrior, making it an 11-inch charge and getting through his ward. And then, in the aftermath,
Died.
I rolled Snake Eyes twice. I'm alive. That was the single most tilting experience of my entire life.
But the story, his heroic story of getting stood on so hard.
Story. His story is fantastic. I now have to pay points to get my wizard back.
Your grots, they're all cheap anyway. Barely cost you any glory.
Yes,
I lost the Killboy Vulture the same way. I did amazingly. I won the game. I rampaged. I lost one model in that game. It was the Vulture. Snake Eyes, spend glory. Snake Eyes. What's the point? But it was a good story. And then I bought his twin brother, and he came back exactly the same for the next game, minus the command trait, the all the bonuses he had before. But it was a good time. But it's a good way to explore your models. Because do you use a lot of custom models in your games, for example?
No, to be honest, I stick pretty closely to sort of GW standard.
Yep.
I try not to be a snob about it, but there's a lot of proxies that people use, 3D prints, that I just really don't like the look of. Like people will proxy in the Total War models 3D printed, and I'm getting on my soapbox now. I'll not go too heavy into this, but for me, I mean, I'll tell you what. Actually, right here, I've got another Loon boss that I want to paint at some point. I'll hold it close to the camera. Maybe I'll send you a picture.
I'm trying to zoom in without showing my bald spot on my head too much. It's quite challenging. Oh yeah.
So this is a grey seer with with goblin bits
Yeah.
attached. I want to find some way to use that. He was fun to build. I've not painted him yet, or I don't know. I don't even know what he's going to be. But I think the answer to your question is I would like to use more custom stuff.
It is that
As it
challenge
is.
between putting a model on the table that you have made and invested in the joy in, and not confusing your opponent.
Yeah.
Which helps, given that I play the same opponent like 5 times a year, and that's it. And he's used to my weird stuff. And then events, obviously, I beg the GW event team to let me bring my stuff, and they're quite accommodating, which is quite nice.
You turning up and saying with your army of flesh-eating courts and saying, "Oh no, these are Soul Black Gravelords."
Every model is built out of a Soul Black Gravelord model.
Okay, all right, no, fair enough.
Yes, there's at least one bit of a Soul Black Gravelord model on each of them. It's just the sword on one of them, but there's a Soul Black Gravelord bit on every single one of them.
Still counts.
Yeah, so it's a model-led experience. So what is your dream conversion then? So if you could build any model, what's your dream conversion?
I mean, it's a bit of a cop-out, I suppose, because I already said it.
The Alariel Beetle?
The Beetle is the big one. That is... Everything's building up to that. I'm probably not going to get started on it for a little while. I need... So to have a trog on the back of it, pulling like a big elastic band to fire a Doom Diver off, that's going to take a lot of chopping and sculpting.
Iron Blasters has the elastic band, I believe, that the ogre's pulling.
That's the one that I've got an eye on. So there's a lot of bits I need to acquire for it as well.
It's a culmination of conversions rather than being a nice simple one conversion.
I suppose other than that, for my Soul Blight, I want to build an entire army of skeletons, maybe a few ghosts as well. So something to replace what's his name, Manfred.
Yeah,
because I don't really want a big bald vampire in the army.
Stands out a bit.
I mean, it's a good centerpiece, but what I need is another good centerpiece.
You need something skeleton
if I can
based.
build something from scratch. Yeah, exactly. That would be ideal. So I don't know yet.
Awesome. Right, well, thank you very much for catching up with me today then. We'll call it time there. And I look forward to seeing your end result, which is in, at this point, 8 days till the closing time. 8 days.
Excellent. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, easy. I'm planning on finishing it tonight, so
Plenty of time.
fingers crossed.
Awesome. With everyone nearly finished on their conversions now, it's a good chance to catch up with our hobbyists and see what they're doing. So Sam, how are you going?
Well, as you can see, build has happened. Got a prime there. I have started colouring in.
The priming gives you the idea of it all as one piece. Obviously, cork, green stuff, all hidden.
All the green stuff and all the kind of awkward joints, and yeah, definitely.
Because you've gone incredibly ambitious on this with not only doing many models on a base, not only converting the models, but recreating an existing iconic model by doing all of those.
Yeah, I mean, it was very much a kind of inspiration there. Once I was looking at heroes for AOS, I'm always drawn to the big kits anyway. So Alariel and Teclis, and and then when I saw that one, I was just like, yep, that's what we're gonna do. So yeah, and I actually successfully managed not to glue everything down. Sub-assemblies.
So every individual model can come off, or is some of them?
A couple of them I have glued on just for the sake of them staying put.
Yep.
But a couple of them do currently come off. Whether or not I leave them as removable, or whether I am just going to glue everything down when I'm done, probably, because I mean, why not? They're going to stay together, so I may as well make sure they do.
So how do you approach a model like this? This kind of competition, because obviously the base size was initially going to be a struggle for you, wasn't it? It was 60 down to 50s.
I had a spare demon prints, like the Shattered Dominion or whatever they are, the 60mm ones floating around, and I was like, oh yeah, whack it on there, and then I was like, oh wait, no, 50 maximum, right? So Kernoth Hunters then.
Slightly smaller.
Yeah. Well, I just had to hack a bit more of the cork out and push them all a bit closer together. So I think it's worked out.
So each individual model is roughly themed after the Catacross equivalent, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. So I'm probably like once everything's done, I'm probably going to put up a like side by side so that you can spot the difference.
Do you have Catacross then?
No, I actually don't.
So your only Catacross is a Hobgrot Catacross currently.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's correct.
So I mean, I've seen your models before. We looked at them in the past. So you had your lying down Nash 2. I want to say it's called. That's a good word. Each of them is kind of a composition model where you've worked out the two models relative to each other. How do you go about doing something like that?
First of all, it's kind of about space, really. Like with the Nash 2 as an example, that was fairly simple in terms of working that, because where you've already got the base size there, you have to fit the mount onto it. And then once you've got that, it's where the rider goes. So with him kind of sitting between the dog's legs there was naturally a space already for him.
Did you often work biggest model to smallest?
No, I mean, this one, the trickiest bit was the basing, like all that cork piled in there. And then trying to get them, because I know obviously like Catagrot there has to go like right in the middle at the top. But then all of his little buddies, trying to slide them in so that they were technically still in the right positions for the Catacross rip-off. And then, like, I built each of them first so that they were as close to the minions of the other build as I could. And then it was a kind of case of trying to actually make sure that I could fit them all in. And yeah, definitely some carving of the rocks in there to try and make sure that everything's slotted together. But yeah, it works. I might do a turnaround as well, and then you can kind of see how, because it is fairly front facing.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you consider the golden angles photography when you've done it, that they all look that right direction?
I mean, because I was using the other one as a reference point. It's more front facing than I would usually have it.
Yep.
So with, say, like the Tree Lord and the Deer, that has a lot of angles. And
they're looking at each other, aren't they, as well? So the more you turn around, the different front angle to it.
Yeah, and then where there's like little details, there's like a woodpecker and a rat and some other like bugs and critters and things around. So there's something to look at on every side of it. So as you turn it around, or no matter where it is on the table, there's going to be like a different point of interest or a little detail that you haven't necessarily spotted the first time around. Whereas these guys, they are very kind of, there's a bit of a cone of where they're looking, but primarily
it's a 90-degree front arc, isn't it?
Facing. Yeah. So, which made it easy to just choose which way to take the photo from.
I was going to say, for something
so
like this, do you consider photography when you're building? So obviously, the challenge was build the model, but the only way we can see the model is based on how you photograph it.
I mean, I quite like playing with cameras anyway, and angles and things. Like, one of my favourite tricks is if you're shooting on a mobile, turn the mobile upside down. So the lens is at the bottom. In fact, I think this one is like that. So the lens is at the bottom, looking up.
Okay, so that upward angle on the model.
Yeah, rather than looking down. So I tend to take one of each. One with it tilted down so that it's looking at it as you would if it was on the table. Yep. But I like to make sure that there's an upward one there as well, just so that you get a more kind of, if you were stood in front of these guys, that is more of the...
It's the model eye view, isn't it? That's how the other models see him. Short models, it's a grot, but still, other models.
Yeah, well, he's standing on a rock.
That's true, he's just a tall for grot. So is there anything you've learned from doing this that you're going to take forward into other projects? You already do a lot of extensive modelling, so there's a limit to how much you're going to learn from a hobgrot on a bit of cork.
I mean, this was a challenge in particular because they're smaller than I would usually play with. I've done quite a few Marines and Stormcast, which are nice and easy because they're quite chunky. They've got good easy joints and sockets, so you can just chop the shoulders or the elbows or whatever, and you can't really tell.
Plenty of contact point to glue something into as well.
Yep. And then, or I do like elves of either the fantasy or the space variety. But again, they tend to have fancy shoulder pads, or you can actually drill the shoulder joints out like a ball socket and then put the arm in. So that works quite well. These guys, none of that. Everything is exactly where it has to go. And there was quite a bit of bending and like twisting and hoping stuff didn't snap. Or admittedly, a couple of things did snap. So then you kind of glue it back in and then smooth some green stuff in the gaps, and then just hope that it maybe sand it down or carve it smooth when you're finished. But
get a final flourish
waiting
on
for that as well. Yeah.
So bits compatibility. I know a lot of you have used some amazing bits in this. Nothing scales right to a hobgrot. How hard was it to get the bits to fit right? Because the hands are wrong, other than for some human hands, the Finamon ones.
Yeah.
How does it work for you?
One of the reasons that I actually ended up doing the Casagrot setup is because I was looking for the sprue that you sent me had 5 hobgrots on it, but 2 of them only had 1 leg.
I saw you all discover this and chat together
because of the way they were split round. And so that was like, oh well, I'm sure I can find a donor from somewhere. And so I was like, I definitely have some grots somewhere, but they are that bit smaller again.
They're less comical.
I did actually, well, I did actually end up cutting one of the, I don't know how well he's going to show up there.
The camera thinks it's background for some reason.
No.
Just about,
he's a mystery bonus then. But I did end up cutting one of the legs off of one of the others to then fit it, because I like the pose better.
Yeah.
So I'll finish him off. Just as a fun project, because I found a dwarven tankard. And my brother drinks hobgoblin beer.
That's a good mix.
I was like, that's got to happen. But yeah, it was kind of like working, I think I said before, kind of like working with fire slayers.
Yeah.
Because they're really tricky.
They're an awkward scale because they're also all muscle as well. There is no good bit cut by armor that you can conceal. You've got to get that muscle back in again. And
the hands are tiny, and the legs are really stubby as well. So they are, I'd say these were actually, the grots were easier to work with than the dwarves. But yeah, no, it was fun. I had a good time, and I think he does primarily have his own hands.
I can't tell. The banner pole's blocking me seeing the one hand. I can see.
The shield hand is definitely Hobgrot.
Yep.
The spear hand, I think, is Hobgrot too, because I think the
spear itself is more tech guard,
one
isn't
would have
it?
been too big, and I had to drill through. I might have had to use a spare one, but yeah, he's all in there.
I say, because you're the one you're the only contestant that's really gone for a multiple model piece. I'd sort of describe it. So obviously we've seen the chariot, the arcane, the man on pier. We've got lots of very different angles. You've all taken a really neat approach. You've shrunk tiny right now, but I'm going to power through it. Because you've all seen what each other's working on.
Yeah, things are...
So the general public won't have seen the Discord where you've all seen and helped each other throughout the process. It's really nice. You've all kind of talked through it. You've all discovered I didn't give you enough legs roughly at the same point together.
Well, I wanted to definitely make it more like it's more of a challenge than a competition. Yeah. So I wanted to kind of make it inclusive, and like there were definitely a few offers of swapping bits earlier on when we were still working on what we were doing, which was really nice, and just generally everybody kind of working on it as a group, not as a team, but as a group.
You're seeing what you can do rather than trying to outdo each other.
Yeah. Well, everyone has their own style and their own ideas anyway, so they're all very different and very cool. There's definitely some stuff I'd be quite happy with in there. So
you've all done better than I do, which is quite painful.
I don't know if that's true.
Oh, it is. I looked at it, but I do armies. This was what one of your other contestants told me. I do armies. I don't do individual models. So that's why you're all better than me, which I'm sticking to. I've got an excuse now, and I'm sticking with it.
Okay.
But now,
Yeah,
you've all
don't do
done.
armies. I can't stick
Yeah.
long enough to do a whole army.
Well, that is awesome. I'm looking forward to your final result. I mean, this is your final one. I assume you're taking a pre-painting picture as well.
Yep. I have started throwing some like base colours out there, so hopefully we'll see how that goes.
So at time of recording this, there is, if I'm doing maths right, 9 days left in this until the final.
It'll be fine.
It's fine. Right. So
It'll definitely have some colour on it.
it'll be fine. Painting doesn't matter, remember. It's
If
all
else
about
fails,
the kit bash.
If all else fails, we'll just throw some tufts on it and call it done. Yeah.
Well, I look forward to seeing it. Cheers.